Okay, listener, let's unpack this deep dive. You sent us some really compelling source material.
Yeah, excerpts from a conversation with the Vietnamese singer-songwriter Minh. It was on the Vietcetera YouTube channel, Gen Z Trian. Right.
That's the one. So our mission today really is to dive into what he revealed about his music, his personality, his life journey.
And just try to figure out what makes him tick, essentially.
Exactly. Think of this as getting the essence, the core story from this chat with him.
Right, pulling out those like surprising details and key insights without you needing to watch the whole thing. We'll explore his creativity.
That connects with his audience.
And what really matters to him, all based on what he shared in that conversation.
Okay, let's jump right in. One of the first things that really jumps out is this distinction MINH makes
Oh, yeah.
between who he is on stage versus off stage. He talks about bringing this incredible energy when he's performing.
Right. He describes it as like giving his all, just pouring everything out there. That's where he's most confident, most energetic.
But then,
Yeah, the moment he gets home, he says there's a real shift.
a shift.
Oh.
What's that like for him?
Well, he becomes much quieter, calmer, more introspective.
Leads alone time.
Definitely. Needs significant alone time to recharge because, and he admits this, he thinks too much.
Huh. I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating contrast, though.
It really is. The dynamic performer and then this like quiet, thoughtful person off duty.
And, this introspective side might even connect to something maybe unexpected. His personal style.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah. He was asked about his signature look, right? The simple black and white clothes on stage. And he explained it actually started as a very deliberate choice.
Deliberate. How so? Like a fashion statement.
Not exactly fashion, more like focus. He wanted to force the audience to focus purely on the music, no distractions.
Interesting.
But over time, he said it's kind of evolved. Now it's more like a personal branding thing, something that reflects his identity.
So it's a...
Yeah, and he explicitly links it to seeing himself as a simple person, aligning that visual simplicity with his inner nature. He even mentioned trying brighter colors as a kid, like light blue, but this feels more him now.
Wow, okay. So less about ignoring fashion, more about intention, both for the art and kind of his self-perception. It's a neat parallel, the visual and the internal.
Definitely.
What about how others see him? Did he touch on that, like what his friends might say?
He did, yeah. He thinks friends would probably describe him as humorous, sociable, maybe quick-witted.
Okay, sounds about right for someone who can command a stage.
But then he adds another layer, which kind of complicates the picture a bit.
Oh, what's that?
Well, despite being sociable, he primarily sees himself as a listener in conversations.
Huh. Really?
Yeah, he prefers to take things in, absorb, rather than, dominate the talking.
So that really highlights that multifaceted thing again. Energetic center sometimes, but maybe fundamentally more of a quiet observer.
Exactly. It fits with that on-stage, off-stage contrast we were just talking about.
It does. It really does. And it makes you wonder, how these different parts influence his art. The conversation also mentions what sounds like a really pivotal moment for him.
Yeah. Around age 17 or 18.
That's it. Seems like he went through something pretty tough.
That's where you get a real insight into his resilience.
Yeah.
He describes hitting a kind of rock bottom period then, a profoundly difficult experience, it sounds like.
And the impact. Long term.
Well, he says flat out that going through that fundamentally changed his personality. It gave him this deep-seated feeling like after surviving that, nothing else feels truly scary anymore.
Like a benchmark for hardship.
Kind of, yeah. He gained this belief that, everything can be overcome, that kind of resilience forged in difficulty like that.
All right.
It must shape his perspective on everything.
Absolutely. His music included, I imagine.
For sure. Hitting that kind of low and coming through it, yeah, it would definitely shift your worldview.
So how does that resilience, or even just this evolving personality, show up in his creative process?
Well, one really striking detail he shared is how long some of his songs can take. To actually see the light of day, I mean.
Oh, yeah. Like how long?
He mentioned one song written late 2017 or early 2018 wasn't released until 2021.
Whoa, that's like 3-4 years just incubating?
Pretty much. But it's not necessarily that he's constantly tweaking them, like adding verses or changing melodies nonstop.
Okay.
He explained it's often more about the song needing to feel ready, and that timing seems tied to his own life stages.
Okay, so the song has to catch up with him, or?
Something like that. He said his teenage songs were very sad, very negative. Then songs from when he was around 20 were still negative, but maybe a different flavor of negative.
That's just a distinction.
Yeah. And his more recent songs tend to be more upbeat, more direct. It seems the songs kind of evolve with him. They reflect where he is emotionally when they finally feel right to share.
So the delay isn't just like perfectionism. It's waiting for the song to align with his current self or find its place in his journey.
Exactly, like an emotional time capsule, as you said.
Speaking of emotions, his lyrics, they often dig into love and heartbreak pretty intensely sometimes. Does he have to, live through every single dramatic breakup to write about it so convincingly?
That's a really interesting point he addressed.
Yeah.
About authenticity and the creative process. He clarified that no, he hasn't necessarily experienced every intense romantic scenario he writes about directly.
Okay. So how does that work then?
His process seems to involve taking emotions which could come from various life experiences, maybe not even romantic ones, and translating them, crafting them into songs that feel like they're about deep love or heartbreak.
Right. So it's less direct autobiography, more emotional synthesis. Is that a good way to put it?
Emotional synthesis, yeah, I like that. And this leads to something else really fascinating about his intention as a songwriter.
Which is?
While the emotions might be real for him in some way, he intentionally leaves space in the lyrics. He doesn't want to present a song and say, this is my exact story, this is precisely what happened.
He wants the listener to...
He wants you, the listener, to put yourself in the song, to interpret it through your own experiences, to kind of wear his shoes in the story he's created, but feel it from your own perspective.
So he aims for that universality by not being too specific about his own personal history in the final lyrics.
Exactly.
That makes so much sense why people connect so deeply then. They feel like the song is speaking to their own situation, their own feelings.
Precisely. Even if his starting point was maybe different, he mentioned being really moved when someone told him a song helped them through depression.
Wow.
Because he actually wrote it during his own difficult period, even if the lyrics weren't a literal diary entry of that specific struggle.
It just underlines that connection, doesn't it? It's not about mirroring his exact story, but about the audience finding their own truth in the emotional world he creates.
Yeah, it's a powerful kind of empathy through art, I think.
Definitely. Okay, shifting gears a bit from his inner world and creative stuff, the conversation also gave us a glimpse into what truly matters to him in his relationships.
Yes, he was actually quite clear about his priorities.
How so?
He ranks them explicitly. Family first, then friends, and then romantic love.
Okay, that's interesting. Family and friends above romance.
That strong emphasis really stood out. And he also had a pretty refreshing take on the whole idea of the one in romance.
Oh, yeah. What was his take?
He basically said he doesn't believe there's just one single the one out there for you in life. He thinks there can be multiple ones at different times or stages, which kind of takes the pressure off that big conventional idea,
Yeah, I like that perspective.
Yeah.
It feels more realistic, maybe. And the value he puts on friendships really comes through, too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. He talked about relying on supportive friends, mentors even, especially when he's feeling insecure or that tendency to overthink it gets negative.
They ground him.
Seems like it. They're the people who remind him of his capabilities, his strengths. And he also puts a really high value on shared humor.
Right.
Laughter. He said he actively seeks out people he can genuinely laugh with. So it seems like genuine connection built on understanding and humor is just fundamental for him across all his close relationships.
That thread of genuine connection, it seems to run through everything, doesn't it? His relationships, how he makes his music for the audience.
Yeah, it really does seem central.
So before we wrap up, did he give any hints about what's next, what's on the horizon for him?
He did offer a little peek into future plans, yeah.
Yeah.
He mentioned potential international collaborations coming up in the next year or so. Specifically mentioned artists in the US and the UK.
That sounds big.
It does. And again, apparently some of these are songs he's had for a while, just waiting for the right moment, the right collaborator. Back to that idea of songs needing to be ready.
International collabs.
Yeah.
That's incredibly exciting for him and for his listeners too, I bet.
For sure. And one more thing he touched on was this idea that moving forward on his path, towards these kinds of goals, it might require letting go of certain things.
Letting go of what?
He didn't specify exactly, but just the idea of letting go maybe past ways of working or old insecurities, who knows? But he views that process as necessary for progress, trusting the path ahead.
Right. Clearing space to move forward. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's try and pull this together for you, the listener. After this deep dive into MI&H's conversation,
Yeah.
what have we really seen?
Well, we've seen how these really profound personal experiences, like hitting rock bottom in his late teens, they weren't just tough moments, they were transformative.
Yeah, building that incredible resilience, that feeling that nothing's insurmountable.
Right. And we explored his creative process, how songs can take years to mature, kind of evolving with him, moving from maybe darker themes towards more upbeat stuff lately.
And we really dug into that unique approach to vulnerability in his songwriting. It's not always strict autobiography, is it?
No, it's more like crafting these emotional landscapes where you, the listener, are invited to step in and find your own meaning. He leaves that space deliberately.
We also touched on the choices behind his image, like the simple black and white clothes. Started as a tool, now it's more personal branding, reflecting how he sees himself.
And we saw how critical supportive friendships are for him, the value he places on genuine connection, humor, prioritizing family and friends.
Yeah, even challenging that idea of the one in romance.
Exactly. Plus, he gave us that glimpse into the future. Those potential international collaborations sound really promising.
It seems like this deep dive has given us a much richer understanding of MI&H, doesn't it? The thoughtful, maybe complex person behind that stage energy.
Yeah, an artist really shaped by his experiences, clearly very intentional about his craft, and pretty clear on what truly matters in his life.
And, it kind of leaves us with a question to ponder, doesn't it?
Oh, what's that?
Well, if an artist uses personal experience as the source, the wellspring,
Yeah.
but then crafts the work specifically so the listener can find their own story inside it, what does that whole dynamic tell us?
About the power of creative expression, maybe?
Yeah, and about that unique bond it creates between the creator, the creation itself, and us, the listeners. Something to think about.